You're listening to episode 127, Providing Hope and Healing Through Writing and Music, with Sandra Donald. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome, and thank you for joining me for this episode today. And today we're going to be joined by author and musician Sandra Donald. Before we get into it, though, I do just want to mention that this episode is sponsored by Navni. Navni is the top-ranked anonymous writing website in the world. Navni provides free wellness resources and low-cost online therapy services to help people cope with various levels of emotional distress. Write anonymously, feel better at novni.com. So I have a great episode for you today with Sandra. We're going to talk a lot about bullying and taking your power back. And Sandra has a book out called It's Your Time, which is a collection of inspirational poetry she's written to help provide hope and healing to others who are suffering as she once did. And Sandra's going to share with us at the beginning of the interview about how she's not one to talk much about herself and why she wanted to come on here today to share her message with you. And she's going to share about how she grew up in the care of local authority in the UK and what that means if you're not familiar with that system, and the bullying that she experienced growing up. And she's also going to share an experience with workplace bullying that she had and how she addressed it, and also how music and writing have helped her and how her book came to be. And she's also going to share what has helped her to be able to trust again. And I do just want to issue a trigger warning if you've experienced bullying either growing up or in the workplace, as you know, what Sandra talks about with her experience could be triggering for you. So just want to mention that. And whether, you experience bullying or some other type of childhood trauma, I think that you'll find this to be a really helpful episode and will be inspired by Sandra's story. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it, and I'll go bring Sandra on. Sandra, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me here today to share your story with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and so when I first heard of your story, I was interested in having you on the show because I know you want to provide hope and healing to others who are suffering as you once did. And, we'll talk in a minute about the things you experienced growing up that caused you to writing became a creative outlet for you that helped you get through your circumstances. And you have a book called It's Your Time, which is a collection of inspirational poetry you've written. So I know we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And what I'd like to do, Sandra, is have you start us out by sharing with us what you'd like us to know about what you experienced growing up, and then we'll go from there. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds very good. That sounds perfect. But before I start, what I want to try and explain about myself is I'm not really a person to talk much about myself, but my sole reason for being part of the podcast interview is so that if I can help one person, then for me, the struggle that it will take me to talk about myself will be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and thank you. Thank you for that, and for wanting to come on here and share your story. And I'm sure that it will help someone who's listening right now.
Excellent. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to start from when I was a young child.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened, my first bullying experience of being bullied happened when I was in care. I grew up in care. And I was picked on because it's the usual thing that I was different. You're different. I was just different in the way that I managed myself. And in particular, I believe it came about because I used to spend weekends with my mother, and she used to buy me clothes and just treat me. And she also in doing that, she also made an attempt to try and include the other children, maybe by bringing some sweets or some chocolates or some books or anything, so that they wouldn't feel left out. But for some of them, it wasn't enough. And that's when the bullying started. It starts with the pushing, the calling of names, little spiteful innuendos. And I remember this particular Sunday that I had just come back from the weekend, and I was in one of the rooms. We had a piano, and I was in the room, and all of a sudden, in came the people that used to bully me with some other people. So I found myself in a situation where I probably had about 6 people in the room with me and feeling quite nervous.
Do you know how old you were at that time?
Probably maybe about 10 or 11.
Okay.
If that. I can't remember exactly, but I know that I was still young, and they were obviously came in and talking and making me feel uncomfortable. And one of the persons in particular started to egg someone on, where they sort of try and get them to do something in particular. And it resulted in one of the boys punching me in my face. And I was absolutely mortified. I mean, I didn't know what I had done to deserve it, which was going through my head, because to me, we were all friends and we were all struggling in a situation. So I didn't really quite get it. But I just froze. I froze. And then obviously, I mean, the people that managed us must have heard. They were always very alert when things were going on. They must have come and tried to resolve the situation. I can't remember how it was resolved. But I do believe that as a part of it, we were all split up and moved into different locations so that we didn't all live together in the same house, because we all lived in the same house together, which made it even more difficult. Mm-hmm. But part of the thing was, for me, I just wouldn't follow the crowd. So if everybody wanted to do something that didn't really rest well with me, I just never wanted to do it. And I think that was part of the catalyst. But I do remember in the incident, whilst the bullying was going on, I remember at some stage, I don't quite remember when, but I did confront one of the girls, because I just get into the stage where I didn't understand. I was confused. I was a child and I was feeling really angry, and I confronted her. And I don't know whether this was the catalyst that brought things to the head, where I actually ended up being surrounded by people and then punched in my face. Yeah, so that was my first exposure to being bullied.
And how long did the bullying go on for?
Well, when you're in it, it feels like eternity. It probably lasted, I don't know. I mean, you're asking me to really open up my memory, which is a bit difficult at the moment. But it probably lasted. It could have been, I don't know, 6 months, a year. I can't actually be exact on that, but it was long enough to make my life very, very uncomfortable when you're living in the same house as people, and that's what they're doing to you on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course.
And you can't escape them.
Did you have anyone to talk to you about it at the time? Did anyone know this was going on?
I don't remember. I can't recall if I did talk to anybody. I think part of when you find yourself in that position of being bullied, part of what you try to do is you try to maybe sort of see how you can be more friendlier, if that makes sense. You know, how can you sort of address it? But really and truly, you can't really address it. You can't stop people from having thoughts and feelings about you. And I think the more you try and be nice about the situation, the more it makes it worse. And going back to the girl that I said that I confronted, I remember when everything had cooled down and everything was okay, this girl turned around to me and she said, I want to be like you. And I remember thinking, why would you want to be like me? I mean, we're all in the same position. We're not any different. And that was an interesting statement, because it then, in the other incidences that I will share, it made me start to think, well, is there something that they can see about me that I can't see about myself, which makes them feel uncomfortable, and it's something that they would like to be able to be like that, or have those characteristics, or whatever it is. So that was quite an interesting statement when she made it.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Yeah. And you said, so you were in foster care, right?
Well, I wasn't in
Is that
foster
what
care.
it's
No, it's when
it's
you're in
different.
the
Okay.
care. Yeah, it's when you're in the care of the council. So you're
Okay.
not in foster care. Foster care in the UK is when you actually probably live in a house with in a more sort of family orientated environment. This wasn't. This was just all children in the house with people looking after us.
Okay, gotcha. And so you were away from your family as well.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that made it even more difficult?
Well, yeah, I mean, because if you have no one to talk to, and that could be, if you have no one to talk to as a child, it's difficult to know how to articulate yourself, because you don't have the language, you don't have the vocabulary, and you don't have the intelligence to actually know how best maybe to articulate yourself. So it could be very difficult to know how to get people to understand what is actually going on. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want people to get involved, because you don't want to make the people that are bullying you bully you even more so, because you've now gone and told somebody that this is what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. How long were you in care for?
For a long time, for a very long time, but I made it out.
Mm-hmm.
I made it out intact,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the main thing. It's not an easy place to exist in, and the main thing was to not follow the crowd. For me, was to not follow the crowd, because you know, even if you follow the crowd and you're living at home with your parents, it can be the wrong direction, the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always my thing.
Yeah. So I know you've talked about this a little bit, but tell us more about the ways in which the bullying ended up affecting you.
Well, I mean, if I look at it now, um, it's made me less trusting of people, and it's made me very guarded. I hold my cards very close to my chest. I'm very careful what I say to people. I'm always intrigued when people ask me questions, exactly what it is they're asking me and why they need to know that information. Those sort of things, which maybe if somebody grew up in an average family outlet, not outlet, but family home, they actually wouldn't think twice about answering those sort of questions. They'd be like, okay, fine. But you're more guarded.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I can say for myself that, I mean, I grew up in at home with my family, but I still ended up kind of being that way as well, just because I had gone through the bullying too. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's just a way that, it ends up affecting people because, um, it's hard to trust people when, people have hurt you, right? And so you become guard. You try to protect yourself because you don't want that to happen again.
Exactly. You put up defense marks,
Yeah.
defenses, and you almost shut yourself in there, not
Mm-hmm.
intentionally, but it's a safeguard, because you're safeguarding your vulnerabilities,
Right.
whatever they may be at any given time, because they change depending on where you are in your life. We all have different vulnerabilities. Um, so it's not a nice place to find yourself in. And I mean, I think even when you're at work, when people try and bully you. If I think about being at work when I was young, a young worker, and being at work, and my boss used to shout at me from his office, and just for me to come into the office, and could never be civil. He was civil when we had the interview and I accepted the job, and was nice for, maybe 3 or 4 months, but then that behavior crept in, and it was so uncomfortable because his behavior was bullyish and I was powerless. And that's what you find yourself in a position, you're powerless. And then how do you confront somebody who's a director of a company and that's how they're behaving towards you? I had no tools. I still didn't really have all the language to actually know how to do that, and how was I going to confront him. So my only way that I could deal with that was one of the times when he shouting from his office, and I'm sitting in an open plan office and I'm just feeling really uncomfortable. I used to feel sick getting to the front door at work. I used to feel physically sick. And just used to not enjoy it. I used to enjoy meeting my friends, but not being in that situation. And this particular day, he shouted at me. And I was so upset, I started to cry. I was so upset. I was upset because I couldn't understand why somebody felt it was okay to behave like that. And number two, I was powerless. And I didn't know what else to do other than to cry. So I walked into the office and I said, what is it that you want? Maybe not as direct as that, but. And he said, I can't remember what he said. And I said, you have to be the rudest person I've ever come across. I said, but let me be very clear about this. The confidence that I have belongs to me, and you are not taking it. I said, no one's taking it unless I decide. I said, so now I'm going to go and report you to human resources. I said, because I'm not tolerating this anymore. And I made my stand, and that was it.
Wow. What do you think allowed you to do that, to be able, to stand up for yourself in that situation?
I really don't know. I don't know where you don't actually know where the strength comes from. Mm-hmm. But I just get to boiling point. I feel this it's like a kettle, rising and rising and rising. And then I think, enough. The consequences, outweigh what I need to stamp down and I need to shut down. And I just go for it. And
how did you feel when you did that?
I felt okay. I thought, now you understand that I have a force that you need to reckon with. But I thought you haven't seen it all, because when I went to the HR department and they were trying to persuade me to not take out my grievance because he was a director and they didn't really want all the fuss, I was like, no, this is going all the way. And so it went all the way. And when it went all the way, they found out that this person had repeated behavior or behaving like that from when he first joined the company. Nobody was prepared to stand up to him and say to him, it's not acceptable to treat staff in that particular way. Mm-hmm. So I think some positives came out of that. He had to go for anger management counseling, and I moved on to a different job.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I mean, that's taking your power back right there, right?
Yeah. And I suppose, in a sense, when you are being bullied, it is about getting to that stage where you think, this is enough. I deserve better than this. I deserve to be treated with respect at every stage and every level. I'm not being rude to you. I'm being courteous. I'm trying to assist you in being able to meet your targets as a director. So what you need to do is do the same to me. Be respectful. You don't shout to me, as if, like when some people they may have thrown their dog a little ball or something and they're shouting for the dog to come back. I don't have 4 legs, okay? I have 2 legs, and I'm a person. And I just sort of just get to the stage where I get angry, and then it's time for me to take back control. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did when I was a young worker.
No, absolutely. I mean, you deserve that respect. We all do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I know that music and writing have been really helpful to you in your healing. Do you want to share a little bit more about that and when you first got into those things?
Well, it's interesting you talk about music because I actually studied at music college and I actually had to confront people there as well. And it just seems to be one of those instances. But that was more of about a Me Too situation because that was more about sexual innuendos. And I confronted the bullies yet again and got them to stop. But as far as the music and when I started to get into music, I originally started getting really into music 10 years ago when my mother passed away. And it seemed to be the one thing that helped me through the grieving process. And then 2 years ago, I suffered a stroke. And when I had the stroke, I thought, well, I need to sort myself out and I need to get onto what it is I really want to do. And that what I wanted to do was be creative. And so I'd written some poems and I decided that I needed to get these poems into some sort of order and into a book so that I would have completed some of my projects that were outstanding. And I must say that it is quite an ordeal when you're going through the book, the different stages that you have to go through. But to finally see the completed article is a real achievement. It really is a real achievement. And I wrote all the poems I wrote about the different situations that I would find myself in on a daily basis. So I've written poems that take us through all different pieces of our life, from being happy, being sad, looking at fear, what is fear, even why fear the bully, which was something I wrote. I don't know why I wrote that at a particular time. Maybe I was going through a situation where I thought maybe somebody was overstepping the line. I've written Where Is My Romeo, talking about love. So there's many different areas that I've covered in my book, which is called It's Your Time. And I'm now on book 2.
Oh, nice. Are you able to tell us anything about that one?
Well, it's similar. It's similar because I like to sit down and if there's something, as I do my journal each morning, if something comes to my mind, and I think this is a topic that could actually sort of help not just myself but everybody. But this time around, I've decided to make a note as to why I've written different poems, which is I didn't do in book 1, and I'm a bit yeah, it makes it a bit difficult sometimes when I'm reading things to remember exactly at what stage was I at my life that made me want to write this.
Mm-hmm. So the new book will be a book of poetry as well?
It will be. It's going to cover, I'm at a different stage in my life, so there'll be things in there that will cover about my stroke. There'll be things that will cover about sometimes after I suffered the stroke, my memory's not so good. That's why sometimes I don't speak as quickly as I would normally. So I've written about all sorts of different things that have been affecting me in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And now, had you written poetry before when you were younger, or did you just start writing when you were writing for your book?
I used to have poetry classes at school. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm remembering I used to completely zone out in my poetry class and just gaze out of the window. And I basically started writing poetry because I was a member of Soroptimist International, which is a women's organisation founded in the States. And they asked members to write a poem about hope to help women and children who had survived wars in various countries so that they could have hope as they were trying to get over their ordeals. And I wrote my poem and it was accepted and placed in their book, Voices for Verses. And that was the catalyst that got me to, that opened the door for that creativity to come through. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for it.
Nice. And tell us a little bit more about your music. What kind of music do you do?
Well, my music, all my the creativity, all of it came off of the back of these two things. My music is it's a mixture of R&B, soul, neo soul, and jazz. I think it's a combination of these things, but obviously it's up to the listener to decide for themselves. And my motto when I'm writing music is I write music to feed the soul, and this is what I've endeavoured to do with my first original composition and songs. And it's really a story taking us from the beginning of when you're looking for that special love and taking us through that journey, the highs and the lows, not dissimilar to the book. And yeah, it's a sort of music that you could listen to whilst you sit down and relax. And
Yeah, and I know you had sent me a link to some of it actually.
right.
Yeah, and I listened to it a little bit, and yeah. Well, first off, you have a very beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you so much.
But yeah, it was very kind of like soothing, and it was nice to listen to. And maybe is it okay if we share that link with the audience as well?
Yeah, you can share that link, and if the audience wish to buy my album, they can do. It is on iTunes, and it's called How Could You? And if they want to search for it, then they need to search for me under my stage name, which is DiCasio, which is D''Casio, and they'll be able to download it and listen to it on iTunes if they want to.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'll have that linked up for everyone. So Sandra, are there any other things, besides music and writing that have helped you to get to where you are today?
My faith. My faith has helped me to get to where I am today. I, especially when I had my stroke, I called on it at every corner and every time that I possibly could. It's a big part of what I'm about. A big part of what I'm about.
Yeah. And how are you doing today? Are there things that you still struggle with?
Well, I still struggle with my memory a little bit. It's not as good as it used to be.
Yeah,
And
as a result of the stroke.
Yeah, as a result of the stroke. But other than that, I'm doing really well. My book is doing well. I'm talking to you. My book is available on Amazon for people to download. It's available on iUniverse. I've had some good feedback. I've now got iUniverse are going to be helping to promote my book. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing really well. I mean, you have to be grateful for all. I'm just grateful for everything. I'm grateful to be able to do the things that I do my music, be able to sit here and have interviews. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. It could be a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have some exciting things going on.
Yes, it's all exciting. I'm going to be writing new songs. Now I'm going to start writing some new material. So that is going to take me on another journey. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Yeah, and do you still struggle at all with, trusting other people and that sort of thing?
I try not to be honest with you, Melissa, because it's not good to really have to live your life like that, where you're not really trusting people.
Yeah, like we were saying, I mean, it's not a good place to be.
It really isn't.
It ends up, I think it just hurts us, right? And it holds us back
Yeah.
and keeps us from being able to enjoy things, enjoy our life.
Well, I think what happens is when people feel that you're not so guarded, they don't really understand it. They don't really understand, well, why won't you tell me a little bit more about yourself? But it's really just because you're trying to work out, well, what kind of person are they going to be? Are they going to be somebody that I can trust, or are they going to be somebody like the other people that have come into our lives that may want to try and bully us for whatever reason? So I suppose it's just a natural thing. But ultimately, I do try and let my barriers down a little bit earlier than when I meet people. But if my instinct told me that there was something wrong, then I'd initially straight away I would like shut it down and walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so what's helped you with that? Is it just being aware of it and just consciously, putting yourself out there more, or is it something else?
You have to. I think I'm aware from my past situations that have happened. I then became more aware of the triggers. So if I found myself in a situation and there's an alarm bell that goes in your head or in your inner stomach or wherever you want to say. If you hear that, then your first thing you can do is you can confront the person, and anything that they say, you can keep confronting them until they actually stop their behavior, or you can just walk away from that person, and that person out is no longer a part of your circle of friends or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the important thing there is that we have the power to choose who's in our lives.
Yeah. But I think when you're a child or when you're younger, you don't actually realize it.
Right.
And I think the difference is if you find yourself in those situations and you're at work or you're at a college, it's not so easy to choose, because you more than likely have to be at work because you have to get your income to go to pay your rent and to buy your food, etc. So you don't have much choice. And if you're at college, like when I was at college, with these two guys constantly on my case, what do I do? Do I leave my course? Why should I leave? Why should I leave my course because of other people and their behaviour? Why don't they leave? Actually, so it's just about trying to, even though you may not feel strong, and I think there are times when you don't feel strong, you may not feel strong, but it's finding that little spark inside you that allows you to step up and say, I will not allow you to bully me. I will not allow you to make me feel uncomfortable. I will not allow you to say sexual innuendos that make me feel uncomfortable. I will not allow you, and just try and use that as part of the first step. Because I think once people are confronted, not everybody, but some people, it makes them think, oh, actually, it throws them off guard. It throws them off guard. That's the word I'm thinking of. It can throw them off guard.
Yeah.
And it's not about trying to be friends with them, because you can't be friends with people who wanted to treat you like that. They're just despicable.
Yeah, we don't have to be friends with everyone.
Exactly. The world is not about that.
Yeah.
You've got to be careful who your friends are, because if you're going to share aspects of yourself, then you have to do as much, I don't know if research is the word, but some sort of gentle process where you try and assess whether this is the person that you're going to open up to, and at what stage you're going to open up to them.
Yeah, because I think either people are going to help to lift us up, or they're going to bring us down, and we have to be aware of what they're doing for us, and we want to surround ourselves with the people who are going to support us and be there and accept us for who we are, rather than people who want to try to criticize us or change us in some way and bring us down.
But the reality is, for me, the reality is, if you really look at the situation, it's not always about you. It's usually about them and their insecurities. It's not. It hasn't. you know, if I go back to the person who said to me, well, I wanted to be like you, that's probably about an insecurity, something that she saw that she thought was good, a trait that she thought would be good, or traits that she thought would be good to have, yeah, that I had without even knowing, and probably still have. So it's really not about us. It's usually about their insecurities and the issues that they need to deal with for themselves. Because I'm not going to take on blame for that kind of behavior and that it had something to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's different if you're trying to get into an antagonistic kind of situation with somebody, then, you know, that's different. But if you're not and you're just going about your daily business, then it's inappropriate, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sandra, I know, you told us about how you're an author and a singer, songwriter. Do you have anything else going on today?
What else have I got going on? The only other things I've got going on is that I would like to make sure that I finish what I start. That's the one thing with me. That may not answer your question, but that's the thing that I've got going on with me, is to finish the things that I started. It's really important because it's so easy for us to just have various things and we just don't finish them. So that's the thing that I've got going on with me, to make sure that I finish what I start
Mm-hmm.
and be the best person that I can. Yeah, be nice, be warm, as engaging as I can be, and just try and do good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, all right, so I want to ask you the final question that I have for you today,
Okay.
and that is, given what you know now, if you could go back to when you were going through your tough times and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would have walked away the minute my instinct kicked in. I would have walked away and shut it down. That's what I would have done without hesitation. It is the only way to actually, because on all the incidences, well, I didn't go in full detail what happened at college, but it was similar. But I had to confront, when you confront people, everyone that I confronted, once I confronted it stopped. It just stopped. May not work for everybody, but it has to date worked for me. So that's what I would do if I was going back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes that's what we have to do, right?
Yeah. It's just about digging deep,
Mm-hmm.
because you usually, with the consistent bullying, it wears you down emotionally. It just wears you down like a dripping tap. Just daily input of negativity about you, what you look like, or what people think, and that can be quite draining on you, on your confidence. You know, and our confidence is not something that should be thrown away or given away, because it brings lots of rewards for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so to then it's like you have to open another drawer somewhere and pick out courage, and pick that courage up. Even when you feel at your lowest, pick it up and say, let's go hand in hand and let's deal with this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you walk hand in hand with your courage and with your faith, if you have faith. And that's it. The result is going to be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great message. So Sandra, what is the best way for people to connect with you, or just find out about everything you have going on?
Well, if people want to connect with me and find out what's going on, they can contact me they can find out about my book on www.itsyourtimebook.co.uk. As a musician, they can contact me on www.dicasio.com. On Facebook, they can contact me at Dicasio R&B Soulful Musician. On Twitter at Dicasio. I'm hoping I've not forgotten anything. but I will make sure that you have all the details, and just double check that I haven't forgotten anything. But just would like to say it's been a pleasure, and that if anybody is looking to buy my book, they can do. It's on amazon.co.uk, and my album How Could You is on iTunes to purchase.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I believe your book is on just amazon.com as well, correct?
That's correct.
For those not in the UK, yeah.
Oh, yes, I keep forgetting.
Okay.
Mustn't forget. It's also on iuniverse.com and barnesandnoble.com as well.
Okay.
For people in the States.
Sounds good. We'll have everything linked up so people can go and check that all out. And Sandra, just thank you as well for coming on and for sharing your story with us today. I appreciate it, and I'm sure that it's been able to help at least one person who's been listening, and certainly someone who has experienced bullying themselves, and just to hear that they're not alone, and there's hope for things to get better.
It's been a great pleasure. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll keep in contact with you.
All right. You have a great rest of your day as well.
All right, then take care. All the best.
Thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 127. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/Sandra Donald to find the links mentioned during this episode or to leave a comment. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it inspiring. I like Sandra's message of hope and healing, and I love having my guests show you that it is possible to overcome what you've been through and to give you that hope for your situation. That's what this show is about. And be sure to come back in 2 weeks for the next episode. Also, head over to the website to grab your free copy of the Top 10 Strategies Guide for Survivors. In it, you'll find the top 10 most common strategies my podcast guests have used for overcoming the effects of past trauma. It's a great place to get started if you're looking for some strategies that can help you in your healing as they have helped my guests. And you can find that at thegrassgetsgreener.com/guide or also on the show notes page. So be sure to grab that if you haven't yet. And lastly, don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And as always, have hope.